several years. Park and Rec on slide 17 is higher this year. The second bullet, really pretty much everything we identified there related to the pool this year, with maybe utilities being the biggest culprit there. But after a couple of years of decreased cost in Park and Rec, we're back up this year primarily because of the pool. Well, the airport on slide 18, of course, that number kind of jumps out at you, and as you are, I'm sure, aware, our state and federal grants came in this year through the NPIAS, which is a 95-5 split, and through the expenditures of those, there was quite a bit of capital outlay at the airport. Library down from 117,000 to 113. A little less capital outlay this year than last year. And you can see the funding sources for the library in the last bullet on slide 19. The levy being about half of the funding half of the expenses. Okay, now we move switch gears to reserves, beginning on page 21. You can see until we get to 2010 how what we did was we compared fund balances in the 500,000 to 600,000 range against what you spend in a year, 600,000 to 700,000, and we were running at about 100% reserve. We had in reserve about what you spent each year, other than maybe 2006, and I guess beginning in 2008 after the flood. What happened in 2010 is there was a $200,000 amount that had been advanced by the several advances to the sewer fund, but $200,000 out of the general fund, and based upon the debt level and the other liabilities of the sewer fund, we came to the conclusion that it will eventually be paid back, but it's going to be so far down the road we don't believe we should report it as unreserved, or in this case now unassigned fund balance, which is the new terminology, by the way, unassigned. So we took it out last year, to bring it down to 288. This year, we have another issue, and that has to do with the fact that the liquor store, through the process of closing up in its last couple of years of operations, also developed a payable back to the general fund. And as you'll see later, what we've determined is there's enough, if they collect their FEMA dollars, there's enough to pay a certain amount of their advance back. But the appearance is at $166,000 most likely, when we pulled up the liquor fund, will not be paid back to the, at least in cash, paid back to the general fund. So as a result, we've brought the fund balance down by that advance as well, and that leaves just $70,000 in really liquid reserves in the general fund compared to 671, which is a 11% general fund balance. So. And we're talking today about, there are several due-froms between funds. Most of them are a result of the flood and not receiving our FEMA dollars prior to December 31 of this year. This is not the case here. In this case, even when we receive the FEMA dollars, it's not going to correct this issue. The sewer and the liquor store aren't going to receive enough FEMA dollars to repair this issue in the general fund. So. As we finish up today, I'll mention that the general fund reserve is maybe job one going forward as far as getting the financial books in order. So, page 22. Let's look at the fire department. Fire department has a very strong fund balance, as the second bullet shows. It's $485,000. The city does keep track of that fund balance separately between the general, or really the city dollars, of $219,000. And then the kind of light brown column there, which is the fire mill rate fund balance, which is $265,000. There is some debt outstanding. The last bullet shows that there is still $51,000 that's being serviced by these fire department dollars. So obviously quite a bit of fund balance in the fire department there. We talked about one of the issues with the fire department is that the equipment was replaced both in fire and maybe ambulance as well after the flood, and we have a lot of equipment at the same age, so you have to come up with a way to stagger your purchases, even though your equipment is really, unlike most departments where they have different years of equipment, yours are pretty much stacked together. Ambulance, I mentioned before, we brought down the fund balance there primarily because back in end of 2008 we recorded receivables, and eventually had to write those off. We end up with a fund balance of about $178,000, and the last bullet shows about $42,000 in outstanding debt. Airport, $63,000. This is one of the funds, for instance, that has a fund balance of 63, but they have been loaned out to other funds. So before we really can use any of that fund balance, we have to get FEMA dollars collected in the airport fund paid back. Library, we've broken out two pieces here, one being the unreserved in the lighter color here on page 25, and then the darker color is the restricted dollars that were given to us for use in building. So my understanding is the lion's share of that $128,000 that you see there in 2011 will be refunded to donors. So that still leave the historical fund balance has still grown and will still be there after that. On pages 26 and 27, we have two pretty significant funds here. Your business flood loan recovery fund was the fund that was set up for the business flood loans. Those have all been loaned out. You can see in 2009, pretty much the fund balance was gone. We do not record the whole $17 million that was loaned out as fund balance. Only gets recorded really as it's collected. So receivables are not considered fund balance because of the fact that they're not liquid. So that's why you see zero balance this year. The category, or the second bullet shows all these dollars that are in receivables. Remember that $12,797,000, the first one you see there, $10.1 million of that is forgivable, and most likely will eventually be forgiven. But until later this year, none of them are officially forgiven, so they remain listed in your financial statements with the deferred against them. But having said that, you can see that the amount that is collectible, which is about $2.5 million in category 1, 1.7 and 1.6 in the other two, is still a substantial amount of receivables to be collected. The other thing I'll note about the Business Flood Loan Recovery Fund, there is a large number of loans, a lot of payments coming in, and your staff did a really good job of implementing that loan receivable system that you purchased. It's working very well. People get a statement as to exactly how much principal and interest they paid from the inception of their loan, so it worked out quite well. I think and everything reconciles to the penny, so they did a really good job with that. Page 27 then, what we're doing is we're keeping both of these funds, we're reporting both these funds. The original business flood loans, as they're collected, are being reported in there, and then whatever cash you have, you're transferring to this page 27, what's referred to as the EDA revolving loan fund. That is your local business EDA fund for EDA fund for business loans. Now, as you look at that slide, you can see that from 2002 to 2008, the balance was probably less than $10,000 is the principal that you had around to make loans to local businesses. These aren't flood loans, these are just EDA revolving loans. Beginning in 2009, we've been able to build that fund by transferring in excess of $500,000 in the last couple of years in cash into this fund for loans. So I'll take you to 2011. We ended this year with $649,000 in cash in this fund for loans to businesses. We have $329,000 outstanding. As those are collected, of course, that will be additional cash for loan out. And there was $100,000 here that was advanced to another fund that, as FEMA dollars are collected, we'll be able to put back in here as well. So, substantial amount, and of course, one of the reasons we do the trend analysis is that you can look to the future and see what's going to happen as we collect those other funds. This slide will just continue to grow, and there will be a substantial amount of dollars in your business EDA revolving loan fund.